Hello everyone and welcome to a new GG Shinobi Remake Developer's Diary. It's been a long time since I've been able to say those words, and in fact I think the last time I did a Shinobi video I didn't even have a microphone. I had to temporarily put this project on the back burner for a while, where I really had to focus on the Castlevania game, but in recent weeks I've done a lot of work on the Castlevania, you could call it the game engine, to the point where I think it's pretty stable and it's good enough where I don't need to touch that for a while. I can just concentrate on creating new enemies, creating the AI for them, and as and when Pyron does the graphics for each level I can then just put the levels into the game. So I think it's in a good state now and I can finally begin to turn some of my attention to GG Shinobi again. While the Shinobi game is a much easier project in terms of the scope, after all it only has the 4 levels plus the final level compared to Symphony of the Night, which has a huge number of areas and different enemies and so on. The main challenge of Shinobi, which makes it in some ways more difficult than Castlevania, is the fact that I can't just take the original graphics and change the colours and so on. It actually has to be completely resized and redrawn for the Mega Drive. So you're pretty much creating entirely new graphics for the game, whereas with Castlevania we can take the original graphics, we have to make some changes to the tiles so it fits in the VRAM and change the colors, which is a big challenge of course, but it's not as challenging as creating entirely new graphics. If you remember the previous GG Shinobi update, I did actually draw new graphics for the cars and for the background and so on, but I was never really satisfied with them, so I thought, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and start more slowly and really build up to the point where I can actually create pixel art to the standard of, say, other 16-bit Shinobis, for example, Revenge of Shinobi or Shinobi 3 or Shadow Dancer. Thinking about this problem recently, I think creating brand new graphics straight from the bat is a bit too much to begin with, so I've decided instead to take baby steps and to build up to that eventually, and to do lots smaller, easier tasks in the meantime. Then I can build up my skill level and eventually I will be able to do the graphics to the standard that I want them to be. For example, rather than cracking on and creating lots of brand new enemy sprites, I've decided to take the original Shinobi Revenge of Shinobi sprite, which is what I'm using as the basis for the GG Shinobi 1 since they're so similar, and to just add a few things and alter it a bit, and I think that'll be good practice for when I eventually create brand new enemy sprites. So the first thing I decided to do was to add more animation frames. After spending so much time looking at Alucard and all the other characters in Symphony of the Night, you really notice just how many animation frames are in there, and going back to Revenge of Shinobi from that, it's really a huge difference because of course Revenge of Shinobi was a very early 16-bit title and it's just on a 0.5 megabyte cart. What I've started to do recently is to draw extra frames, for example in between the walking frames here. As you can see, it looks a lot smoother now that you got those additional frames, and it's a lot easier than having me just draw a brand new enemy sprite based on the Game Gear title. I can take the previous and the next animation walking sprite and I can just draw something in between, and that's a much easier task. And of course right now it needs a lot of finessing, it's not complete, but I think it doesn't look too bad. I've also done the same for the double jump already, because after all in the game you're going to be double jumping a lot, and in the original the animation, I wouldn't call it choppy, but there's only 4 frames of animation, whereas I've got many frames to the point that it almost looks like it's rotating, but of course the Mega Drive doesn't have that function. That was all well and good in terms of sprites, and I could already feel myself become more confident in creating new frames and eventually hopefully creating brand new sprites too, but what about the background graphics? Well, I decided to spend a bit of time looking at Revenge of Shinobi again, just for inspiration to see how to use colour and so on, and that gave me an idea. If upgrading graphics from 8-bit to 16-bit is too difficult for me right now, how about a slightly easier task, which would be taking 16-bit graphics and upgrading them to 32-bit graphics. That will give me the excuse to spend a lot of time observing and analysing the Revenge of Shinobi graphics, while at the same time being able to practice some pixel art skills. So that's what I proceeded to do, and I've done this for a few weeks now. And what I've been basically doing is taking the original tile sets and just basically adding much more colour. It's really been a good fun practice exercise for me, and I can already feel myself getting better and better by the day. I now have a much greater feel of what Shinobi graphics should look like, and how many tiles are necessary to make a good image, and the use of colour, especially how they use the limited Mega Drive colour palette to create different shades in the first place, and as a bonus I get to create this new art too, which is really fun. Let me show you some of these sections I've done already. So the original art is on the right hand side, that's the Mega Drive version, and the left hand side is the new improved version. Well, I won't say improved, I'll say different, just the what I would call the 32-bit version. And when I say 32-bit, of course, I'm not referring to the color depth, I'm simply using it very loosely just to describe what a potential, for example, Saturn version of the game could look like. If we take a close look up of the Mega Drive version on the right here, you can see how they've used this grey colour an awful lot to show a bit of darkness and so on. But since I have so many other colours to play with, I can simply use different shades and hues of the same colour to give the same kind of effect, and I can add a lot more kind of grain to the wood and so on. And as we go down, you can see the same kind of effect with the vegetation and the rocks and also the wall. I've added many more shades of green to the bamboo just to give it more of a kind of a circular look about it as well, and of course the backgrounds. And as we go to the wall, you can see that in the original they used one single shade of grey because of course they couldn't use too many, whereas I've got more of a gradient of grey colour just to add a bit of texture to the wall. And as we look at a couple of other areas, you can see there's the same story here too, especially with the wood. I can make it a lot more granular, add a lot more shadow and so on, and you can see the wall as well here. Again, it's got the gradient of grey colours, the kind of texture of the wall rather than as a single grey. While it varies scene to scene, I've pretty much gone from 16 colours in most of the original Mega Drive graphics, which is absolutely amazing considering how good it looks. It's amazing how they used a colour like that, and it's going to be inspiration for when I do the GG Shinobi graphics, to around 100 plus or 200 for these new ones. Now, with all this talk of 32-bit versions in the Sega Saturn, you might be wondering what they look like on the Saturn itself. Now, my Saturn programming skills are very limited to say the least, but I know how to put some graphics and sprites onto VDP1 at least, so that's what I've done here. You can see there's a rotating Shinobi sprite in the center because why not, and I've also tried to do some transparencies too with the waterfall, because I think in the second level it'd be nice to have some transparent waterfalls, because it's a nice effect that the Mega Drive couldn't do. But you can see that I haven't quite got the technique down. As I said, my Saturn development skills are very bad, and I haven't really got time to develop them right now. I'm too focused on the Mega Drive, but it's nice to see what the graphics look like on the Saturn itself, and I've played it on my own Saturn here and it looks quite nice. Before anyone gets too excited about a potential Revenge of Shinobi remake for the Sega Saturn, I just want to say that at the moment this only exists as an art project, just in order to let me build the skills from get to where I am in my pixel art level right now to where I want to be able to create nice pixel art for the GG Shinobi game for the Mega Drive. However, in theory, if once I've got the actual game logic for the GG Shinobi on the Mega Drive written as GDK, I should be able to transfer that game logic to the Saturn quite easily, because they both use C programming language, so the game logic should work fine. It's just a case of changing everything to do with how it relates to the Mega Drive's VDP. So instead of using the Mega Drive VDP commands, it uses the Saturn VDP1 and VDP2 commands, and the same with the controllers and so on. Of course, if there were to be a Saturn in the future, we could add stuff too, like extra background layers, because the Saturn can do 5 background layers where the Mega Drive is limited to 2. However, as I said, this is still an artistic project at the moment, and in terms of GG Shinobi, this schedule for the future, I'm going to be continuing to just do these 32-bit versions of the Revenge of Shinobi backgrounds. I'm going to continue to take the Revenge of Shinobi sprites I could use in GG Shinobi and add some extra animations and so on. Then once I'm confident enough, I can start to do the GG Shinobi graphics again, and I think maybe next summer I can actually start programming for GG Shinobi again too. And I think I would like to start brand new, not use any of my old code, because I'm much better programmer now than I was then, and it'll be really nice to start afresh. It's almost like when you start a new term at school and you have a brand new notepad and you write on the first page. It's like a nice blank sheet of paper, and it feels really good to start from afresh, and I think I can do a much better job this time. Oh, and by the way, the music you've been listening to is actually an expanded and enhanced version of the Revenge of Shinobi soundtrack by a YouTuber by the name of Maestro Draven. They did a really fantastic job with an already amazing soundtrack by Yuzo Koshiro, and I think, if there were to be a Saturn version, it would be nice to have a CD quality soundtrack kind of like this, but I won't bother this person just yet. That's too long into the future, but hopefully if the time comes and I decide to do it, hopefully they will be maybe willing to cooperate, and it'll be great to have their music in the game. As I said, that's way into the future, but definitely go to their YouTube channel and have a look, because it's a really amazing soundtrack, and it's something I've been listening to for inspiration as I've been drawing the sprites and the graphics. Oh, and speaking of music, the musician for the GG Shinobi Mega Drive game, Aliana, already did the whole soundtrack a long time ago now, and it sounds really fantastic, so I will link to that also, so definitely listen to that if you haven't already. Okay, so it's great speaking to everyone about Shinobi again after such a long time. Next week will be another Castlevania video. As always, thanks very much for watching, and if you're interested in this type of content, don't forget to subscribe.
I'm interested in this.
And for those of you who wish to support the channel, I have a Patreon, and any support is much appreciated.
You won't go unrewarded.
Until next time,
farewell.